So in a previous video, I talked about how the strongest way to bolt through a piece of rectangular tube is to insert something that won't be crushed by the force of the bolt being tightened inside of the tube. And I mentioned churro because we used a lot of this on the 2023 robot. But there are other pieces that you can use for this purpose. The problem with this churro is that before you have this bolt in here, it can actually slide side to side. So it can be very difficult to get lined up inside of the tube. Also, because it is so much taller than it is wide, it can actually tilt inside of here and get jammed. And that's very difficult to deal with, especially when, again, it may be already 7 or 8 inches down inside of a tube and you might not have tools to work with. So another option is to make a crush spacer that you can 3D print. So before we do that, let's actually take some dimensions here. We'll go to Evaluate, Measure, and I want to take the inside dimensions of this tube. So for example, these two faces are 0.875 inches apart, and the other ones should be the same, but let's just check. 0.875 inches apart. And we believe these holes are centered on the faces, but let's check the diameter. That's a 0.196 inch diameter hole. So just as a simple sort of disconnected part, we can make a crush spacer. So I'll make a new part. I will go to the front plane here and make an extruded boss / base. And this will create a sketch on the front plane that we can start working on. So first thing I'm going to come up to is this center rectangle tool. It's the drop down next to the rectangle tool. I can sketch a rectangle on the origin. This is important because otherwise this center point of the rectangle can move around. Next thing is, let's come up to Smart Dimension. Let's put a 0.875 inch dimension on both of these. Now that might seem like, oh, we'll extrude that, we'll just go, it'll fit right inside. The problem is, if you actually make this part as is, the 3D printers usually print a little bit oversized. So if you did this, we'd have a problem with it fitting. So we actually want to go a little bit undersized on this. So maybe a 0.860 or 865 would work. You can just change that on both of these. All right. And then let's extrude this, I don't know, an inch. All right. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to make a hole. So we'll come up to Hole Wizard. Now, the size screw that fits tubing is a number 10. So for hole type, we're going to choose this simple hole here that doesn't have a counter bore, it doesn't have a countersink, it doesn't have threads cut into it or anything. And then for the type, for the sizing, we'll choose screw clearances. Come down to size, choose number 10. Loose clearance will be fine for this. We don't need it to be a tight clearance. And then end condition, through all, means that the hole is just going to go through until it hits the end of the part. Then we come up to positions here and hit the space bar to look at this face. So it's going to go on this face somewhere. And I am actually going to pick, here's the origin point. I'm going to make it vertical with the origin so that it's along there. And we technically could put it anywhere, but I'm going to do a dimension. Let's put this halfway down, half an inch down. All right. So then exit out of hole position. And there we go. We've got a block with a hole through it. Let's go ahead and save this as a basic crush spacer. And then I can go into the assembly where we were before. We will hide this churro, and then I will do assembly, insert components, basic 3D printed crush spacer. And I can mate this into there. So first one is I'm actually going to mate the hole here to the screw. I'm going to mate this top face here to there. And then if I go out of the mates, you'll see that this is actually able to rotate on there. So I have to mate one of these faces as parallel. So mate this face here maybe as parallel to there. It chose parallel for me already. Oh, we're actually sideways. You see how it's poking out the side here? Because that was not 1 inch by 1 inch. So we chose the wrong options for this mate. Let's choose this face to be parallel. There we go. So now you could slide that spacer in. It won't be as easy as a spacer that you install from below, like through the hole, but it is significantly easier than trying to slide a churro in, because you only have one dimension, you only have the distance in for it to line up.